me and you. Get the hell out of here, man. I'm not fighting. You two have a good night. Hold up. Not even that part about your dad?
During an American football game, an enraged opponent reminded Jake Tyler of his father, who had drunk himself to death and passed away not long ago. Jake was never good at holding himself back, so both the trash talker and several other players paid for it. The incident turned into a full-scale brawl, but Jake didn't worry too much. He was moving to another city anyway. Margot was fed up with her son constantly getting into fights and hoped that a fresh start would help him keep his temper under control. The family was moving because of Jake's younger brother, Charlie, a promising tennis player. They were relocating to Orlando, where Charlie would attend one of the best tennis academies in the country. As for Jake, the high school senior would have to adjust to a new school, located right next to a stadium. Jake saw one guy beating another and stepped in to help the victim, only to get an elbow to the head from the same kid. Apparently, there was some kind of underground fight club at this school, and the newcomer was advised to mind his own business. A girl with an unusual name, Baha, noticed Jake. After class, she started flirting with him. At home, his mother reminded him that he'd been taken to the police station 6 times at his previous school. It was time to calm down. The next day, a long-haired guy introduced himself as Max. His friends already knew that the new kid had started a serious fight at his old school. The locals were always fighting, and someone like Jake would fit right into their fight club. A video of the brawl spread across the internet, and Jake became famous overnight. That evening, Baha invited Jake to a party. His mood instantly lifted. The party was held in a luxurious mansion. It seemed like all the city's youth had gathered there. It was time to meet the host, Ryan McCarthy. Girls in bikinis were everywhere. But according to Ryan, the real action was happening in the backyard. Bare-knuckle fights were taking place on the grass. Boys, girls, even ex-lovers. And all of this chaos was organized by Ryan himself. Suddenly, Ryan announced that he and Jake would fight right then and there. Jake definitely hadn't expected that, and refused, but the local champion wasn't interested in his opinion. To provoke Jake, Ryan kissed his girlfriend, Baha. Jake still headed for the exit, but he wasn't going to be allowed to leave so easily. Ryan knew exactly what to say, and brought up Jake's father, who had died in a drunk driving crash. That was enough. Jake accepted the challenge and put on the gloves. Jake charged forward aggressively, but his opponent had solid grappling skills and quickly tied the newcomer up. Jake tried to fight dirty and managed to land a few good shots, but boxing alone wasn't enough for this kind of fight. Jake didn't know how to defend against low kicks, and soon he collapsed onto the lawn. Ryan mounted him and landed several more blows. He could have let Jake get up, but instead finished him with a brutal kick. Still, Jake refused to stay down. He got back to his feet, and Ryan treated him like a heavy bag. Max begged Jake to stay down, but he didn't listen. The champion ended the fight with a devastating head kick, knocking Jake out cold. As Max dragged the battered kid home, he realized that Jake's beating had become the main topic of discussion at school. Ryan, meanwhile, was extremely pleased with himself. Jake spent the entire next day in bed. That evening, Max came by again and told him the truth. Jake never stood a chance. Ryan's father had put him into karate when he was only 4 years old. Max brought a DVD featuring the best grappling techniques and suggested that Jake train in Muay Thai under his coach, Jean Roque. After giving it some thought, Jake went to the gym. He immediately asked to train with the advanced group. Jean pushed his fighters from one station to another until total exhaustion. By the end, Jake could barely climb the rope to the ceiling before collapsing onto the mat. But that was only the warm-up. Jean split the guys into pairs. Jake thought he'd been given a partner who was way too small, but it took only a few seconds for the bull to tap out after getting caught in an arm lock. Jake was also clearly behind in striking. He didn't know what to do when he got caught in a choke either. He was supposed to tap, but the stubborn idiot chose to take a nap. He never gives up. Jean liked Jake, but set one condition: no fighting outside the gym. That evening, Baha came to apologize. Jake was still angry at her and had no intention of forgiving her. After all, she had lured him into a situation where her boyfriend beat him senseless. The next morning, Jake showed up at the gym an hour early and paid for 2 months of training up front. Gene started teaching him low kicks and proper breathing while striking. The coach demonstrated what a truly powerful kick looked like, and the heavy bag flew across the room. Baja looked miserable next to the rich kid, yet for some reason, kept hanging around him. Jake spent all his time training. His mom had her own workouts, cleaning up after everyone at work. She scolded Jake for not going to Charlie's game. He could have supported the kid. She also wanted to know where the $200 he withdrew had gone. When she saw the gloves, she got furious and ordered Jake to stop fighting. Next time, Jake and Baja were paired up by a teacher and started arguing right in the middle of class. After school, she confronted Ryan and said he had lied to her. He promised an easy sparring match, but nearly crippled Jake instead. That was the final straw. Baja decided to break up with him. Ryan grabbed her arm roughly, but Jake immediately stepped in. At training, Jake was way too aggressive. Gene told him to calm down. He had to control the fight every second. Jake didn't listen and went after the coach. Gene punished him and sent him home to cool off. As Jake left, he yelled that Gene was a bum who lived in the gym. Jake decided to take his anger out on 3 guys he had a road dispute with and used the techniques he'd learned on them. The brutal beating was filmed by Max, who posted it online the same day. The whole school started talking about Jake again, and Max benefited from the sudden fame. Only Baja was disappointed in him. Ryan didn't like seeing his ex hanging around the new guy. He followed Jake into the bathroom, swept his legs, and stepped on his throat. Beating up random losers didn't impress him. Ryan challenged Jake to an underground no-rules tournament to prove who was tougher. On his way out, the bastard kicked Jake in the thigh. At home, Max showed Jake footage from previous tournaments. Ryan had won twice. Jake came to the gym as usual, but Gene banned him from training. Jake had broken the main rule: no fighting outside the gym. He was expelled. That day, Charlie came home with a black eye. Their mom blamed Jake's influence and smashed a plate against the wall. He wasn't the only one allowed to be angry. Then Charlie admitted he hadn't fought anyone. He'd just been hit by a tennis ball during practice. Jake and Max waited outside the gym for Gene. Max refused to train without his friend and hoped to convince Gene to forgive him. They followed the coach all the way to a store. Jake finally admitted the truth. He only came to the gym to get revenge on the guy who beat him. He talked about his violent outbursts, his father dying in front of him, how he was ruining his family's life, and how Gene's gym was the only place where he could control his anger. Gene forgave him. Jake's training became even more intense. He had never used his legs in fights before, so stretching became a priority. Max supported him every step of the way. Gene then opened up about his past. His father had always been proud of Jean's younger brother, a gifted fighter Jean could never measure up to. One night, a thug picked a fight with Jean in a bar. Jean beat him up, but 10 minutes later the man returned and shot Jean's brother dead. Their father never forgave Gene for not protecting him, and they never spoke again. Jake finally came to support Charlie at his match. He also decided to fix things with Baja, just a few words, and they were kissing again. Jake's mom wanted to see where her son spent all his time. Gene assured her that the boys left the gym calmer than when they arrived, so there was nothing to worry about. Margot paid for another month of training herself. Max received a text. The tournament would take place tomorrow night. He was shocked to learn Jake wasn't planning to fight. Ryan's father showed his friends who was really in charge and humiliated his son in front of them. He expected Ryan to destroy the strongest fighter at the tournament. Rumor had it Jake could now beat Ryan. Ironically, Jake wasn't even supposed to compete. Ryan decided to get to Jake through Max. He brought him to his mansion and suggested a friendly fight. The rich kid started throwing punches, mocking him, then turned it into a full beating, smashing Max's head into the floor. Ryan's friends dumped the half-dead guy at Jake's doorstep. Broken ribs and nose, stitches on his lip and cheek. Jake left his friend at the hospital and, taking the bait, headed to the tournament. Both Baja and Gene tried to stop him. If Jake fought again, Gene would never forgive him a second time. But Jake tried to convince him otherwise. You can't hide forever and let degenerates do whatever they want. This was his fight, and he was going to finish it. Jake arrived at the club where the tournament was about to take place. Mats were laid out right in the middle of the venue, and the first fight started immediately. The smaller fighter was knocked out by a brutal head kick. In total, 32 fighters were competing in the tournament. Jake signed up, and the draw immediately matched him against the champion, Ryan McCarthy. However, the organizers made a mistake. The champion was supposed to fight Taylor, not Tyler. Ryan warmed up and completely outclassed his opponent using knees and elbows. Jake finished his own fight with a submission and barely broke a sweat. Ryan then faced a capoeira fighter who danced around for a while, but one clean punch to the head ended the fight instantly. In the next bout, Jake got his arm twisted badly, but he managed to escape, took control, and started tossing his opponent around. Once Jake locked in his submission, there was no escape. The opponent tapped out. Ryan went up against a tough Asian fighter. Realizing he couldn't win on the feet, Ryan successfully applied a choke and secured the victory. Only 8 contenders remained. Iroquois kept hammering Jake's ribs, never giving him a moment to breathe. Jake couldn't out-wrestle him, and took another heavy body shot before getting caught in a submission. Still, he refused to tap. Twisting his way out, Jake ended up on top and locked in a triangle choke. The win didn't come easy. Jake reached the semifinals badly injured. He went straight to the locker room and pressed ice against his cracked ribs. Despite the pain, Jake said he could continue. Baja came by to support him. Ryan dealt with his opponent much more easily, but winning wasn't enough for the sadist. He tried to gouge the poor guy's eye out. For that foul, Ryan was disqualified, and the victory was awarded to the fighter with the injured eye. When Jake learned that his enemy was out of the tournament, he immediately withdrew as well. The crowd was furious, but Jake didn't care. He hadn't come for a title. The psycho caught up with Jake in the parking lot. Ryan attacked him from behind, and the two enemies turned the place into a slaughterhouse. This fight drew more attention than the tournament final, and everyone rushed outside. By then, Jake was lying on the asphalt, while Ryan tried to break through his guard. When Jake got back on his feet, the rich kid kept targeting his ribs. He slammed Jake onto the hood of a car and punished his body again. Jake tried to go for a submission, but Ryan threw him hard onto the pavement. Ryan attempted a guillotine choke, but flashes of memory kept Jake from blacking out. He broke free and unleashed a striking combination taught to him by Gene. The bastard was sent into a deep knockout. After the loss, Ryan finally respected Jake, and Jake managed to convince Gene to fly to Brazil and, after 7 years, reunite with his family.